and important message with us on NewsX World. Now we move on to South Africa. South African newspapers have highlighted growing concerns over recent Gaza evacuation flights after a group of Palestinians arrived in the country under unclear circumstances. A few local newspapers have reported the issue under the headline, "A Ticket to Wherever for War-Weary Gazans," while others led with South Africa on high alert for more Gaza flights, reflecting the rising scrutiny around the arrivals. According to border authorities, 153 Palestinians landed at Johannesburg airport on Thursday on a chartered Global Airways flight from Kenya. Officials have said the group arrived without departure stamps, return tickets, or confirmed accommodation details, prompting immediate checks by immigration and security teams. President Cyril Ramaphosa has said that South African intelligence agencies, the Department of Home Affairs, as well as the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, were jointly assessing the situation to determine the circumstances of the passengers' travel and ensure all protocols were followed. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Ayanuga Olugbenga-Paul. He's a public affairs analyst, joins us live from Lagos. Thank you very much, Mr. Ayanuga, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now looking at this, how should South Africa balance humanitarian obligations towards the war-affected Palestinians with national security and immigration control concerns? How dangerous or risky is it if such charter planes continue to show up with refugees to South African airport?
Well, I think it's a dangerous precedent that South Africa needs to be very careful of, in as much as they want to help the refugees in Gaza or help the Palestinians in one way or the other, which they have been doing quite well. We've seen that while many other African countries and many other countries are either timid, sitting on the fence, or pro-Israel, South Africa has been one of the vocal voices condemning the genocidal act of Israel in Gaza and the Palestinian lands. So, but what seems to be happening that I feel South Africa needs to be careful of is that we must always, in governance, most of the big countries in the world who have successfully managed their economy become world power. If you check, one of the common denominator with many of them is that they pay attention to history, and history guides a lot of what they do today by looking back. And so, in saying that, I'm asking South African government that yes, it is good you want to help these people, but if you don't need, after this first flight that brought in 156 people and then 130 of them are left in South Africa without any proper arrangement, while the others were able to find their way to other destinations. If South Africa does not make a strong statement that will deter such from happening in the future, it could be that, as alleged by the Palestinian Authority, that Israel is finding a way to displace people out of their land so that they can reclaim all those places after having resettled out all the people who were there before. It could also be that the Palestinians were looking for safer havens to protect themselves. But what this does is the issue of apartheid and white, the white community in South Africa already controlling almost 80% of their business landscape, even though power is in the hand of black, that's the political power, is already, it's a brewing problem that, even though it is not loud, it is not visible, but it is there. You cannot deny that it's not there. Now, add to the mix these Palestinians who come in, and for survival purposes, they will do anything. And maybe the color of their skin will get them more favors than the South Africans. Before you know it, you will see anger building up and the xenophobic attack, taking place. So all the previous efforts of South African government will now turn on its head if it is not monitored. It could also be that these people terrorists will be inserted among them, who will now use South Africa as staging ground for their next offensive. Or even those terrorists might not even be Palestinian sponsored terrorists. It might even be Israeli or US government sponsored terrorists who will use South Africa as a staging point to plan a terrorist attack, maybe against Israel or a US interest somewhere. And then the US and Israel will use that as an excuse to face South Africa in a war. All these are possibilities that South Africa need to be careful of and not allow itself to be drawn into battles that it is not prepared for. And of course, the reason why I also further believe that South Africa needs to make strong statements about this is that you ask yourself, why is the rest of the Arab world not accepting refugees when an Arab nation is under tension? For example, during the Syria issue, Syria to Saudi Arabia is very close to each other. And Saudi Arabia has tents that can contain more than 3 million people, if refugee comes in. But none went to Saudi Arabia. They were all heading towards Europe. And many of the European countries who opened their borders, to accept these people in, I'm sure some of them are regretting now. Case in point with Germany, France, and UK, where you have all these knife attack and all the rest of them. So I am saying, in as much as South Africa wants to help, it should also think wide, using history as a guiding light to put its own national security first and do whatever it needs to do to protect its people first. Because once there is peace in South Africa, that's only when South Africa will be able to help any country it wants to help in the world. But if agents of destabilization are allowed to, mingle with those who genuinely are seeking safe haven, they may not even rear their head in the next 10 years. So if all I'm saying now will look like, oh, it's just a fear mongering, they may not rear their head
Yes.
in the next 15 years. But when they do rear their heads, the
Yes, Mr. Ayanuga, thank you for sharing that. Please stay with us as we have